The chamber was silent. Cold light fell from the ceiling, shining on the prisoner who knelt in chains. Around her, the great council sat in a half-circle, their faces hidden by shadows. The air smelled of metal, oil, and fear. She was young, though her eyes carried storms far older. Her name was Kaylin, daughter of no house, worker of no trade, accused of the greatest crime in their empire. She was accused of speaking lies to the council. The guard struck the floor with his staff. The sound echoed like thunder. "Silence in the court," he barked, though no one dared to make a sound. The head counselor leaned forward. His skin was pale, his eyes thin and sharp as blades. "Kaylin of the lower wards," he said, his voice heavy with judgment. "You stand guilty of lies. Lies against the empire. Lies that spread fear. Lies that disturb peace." Kaylin raised her head. Her lips trembled, but her eyes did not break. She tried to speak, but her voice was hoarse from days of chains and nights without water. "It was the truth," she whispered. The chamber stirred. Gasps spread like sparks across the room. No one had expected her to answer. The counselor slammed his hand on the desk.
"Enough! You dare to speak falsehood even now?"
"You warned of an invasion, a shadow fleet at our borders. Yet no scout has seen such ships. No censor has found such threat. You spit poison into the ears of the people. And for this, you will be punished." Kaylin's heart beat fast, but her spirit did not fold. She forced her voice to rise. "You do not see them because you do not want to see. They are real. They are coming." The guards pulled her arms back hard. She cried out, but still her eyes blazed with fire. Her courage seemed to cut through the silence of the hall. One elder council member, old and tired, lowered his gaze. Perhaps he believed her. But he said nothing. None of them ever did. The head counselor stood tall. "You know the law," he said coldly. "A tongue that speaks lies is a danger to all. And so the liar must lose her tongue." The chamber erupted in low murmurs. The punishment was ancient. Few had seen it carried out in their lifetimes, but all knew its meaning. Without a tongue, a liar could never spread falsehood again. Two guards stepped forward, their armor dark, their faces hard. One carried iron clamps, the other a curved blade that glowed faintly in the cold light. Kaylin's chest tightened. She pulled against her chains, but the metal cut her wrists. She opened her mouth to scream the truth again, but the guards forced her down. The blade shone inches from her face. She looked into the crowd. No one looked back except one man standing near the far wall. He was not dressed like the others. His clothes were plain, stained with grease and dust. A worker, not a counselor. A mechanic who had come only to fix a broken panel in the chamber. His eyes met hers. For a brief second, he felt something strange, like her gaze was begging, not for life, but for someone to believe her. And then the blade came down. Her scream cut through the chamber, raw and sharp. Blood spilled onto the stone floor. When the guard stepped back, Kaylin's mouth was red, her eyes wet but unbroken. She tried to speak, but only a wet gasp came out. The tongue that had dared to speak truth, or lies as they claimed, was gone. The counselor raised his hand. "Justice is done. Let this be a lesson. Lies will be cut at their root. Take her away." The guards dragged her across the floor. Her chains scraped against stone. She left behind a trail of blood that marked each step. The chamber slowly filled with voices again. Some praised the council for their strength. Others whispered in fear. None spoke for her. But the mechanic, the man with grease on his hands and dust on his boots, could not look away. He had seen many punishments in his life. Thieves whipped, rebels burned, but this was different. He watched her eyes. Even broken, even bleeding, they did not look like the eyes of a liar. They looked like the eyes of someone who had carried a heavy truth. As the doors closed and her figure vanished into the shadows beyond, he felt something stir in his chest. A question, a doubt, a spark of belief. Maybe she was not lying. Maybe she was the only one telling the truth. The mechanic's name was Joran. To most people, he was just another worker in the lower levels of the city, fixing broken engines and welding pipes. His hands were always black with grease, his clothes stained with old oil, and his hair carried the smell of smoke. He had no titles, no medals, no family name carved into stone. People walked past him every day without notice. To the council, he was nothing, just a tool to keep their machines alive. But Joran had eyes and he had memory. He had seen things that others ignored. That night, after the punishment, Joran could not sleep. He lay in his small workshop staring at the ceiling where the fan spun slowly, squeaking with every turn. The sound of Kaylin's scream still rang in his head. The image of her eyes, full of pain but not of lies, burned into his thoughts. He had seen liars before. He had seen thieves cry for mercy, smugglers beg for life, rebels shout false courage before their end. But Kaylin had not looked like them. She had looked like someone carrying a burden no one wanted to hear. Duran turned on his side. His tools lay scattered across the bench. The engine part he had been repairing for the council chamber sat unfinished, wires spilling like veins. But he did not care. For the first time in years, his mind was not on machines. It was on her. The next day, work called him back to the upper levels. The council's machines were old, but no one dared complain. Duran walked through the tall corridors, past guards with polished armor and citizens who kept their heads low. He passed the chamber where it had happened. The floor was already cleaned. No trace of blood, no mark of chains, nothing to suggest the horror from yesterday. The council always erased their cruelty quickly. They liked their walls to shine, their halls to look perfect. But Duran remembered a guard blocked his path. "You there, mechanic?" "Work order?" Duran held up the slip of metal with the job stamp. The guard scanned it, grunted, and let him through. Inside, the chamber was empty. The high seats stood like black towers against the wall. The light from above was calm and cold, the same as yesterday. But Duran's eyes went to the corner, to the door where Kaylin had been dragged out. His stomach tightened. He heard footsteps. The elder council member, the one who had looked away, walked past. His face was heavy, his back bent. Their eyes met for only a moment. Then the old man turned his head and vanished into the shadows. Duran wondered if guilt ate at him, or if fear had sealed his lips forever. By noon, Duran was back at his workshop. He was fixing a broken hovercart engine when the door creaked open. At first, he thought it was another customer, but it was a guard. Not just one, two of them dragging someone with chains. It was her, Kaylin. Her face was pale, her lips cut, her mouth bandaged where the wound still bled. Her eyes were dim with pain, yet when they found him, they lit with a flicker of recognition. "Orders from above," the guard said coldly. "She will be put to labor until her body breaks. Fix her collar." "It is broken." Duran looked down. Around her neck was a shock collar, used to control prisoners. The device sparked weakly, half dead. He knew he could repair it in minutes. He also knew he could do something else. The guard shoved her against the wall and left the collar in his hands. "Work fast, mechanic. Don't test our patience." They stepped back, watching him closely. Duran's fingers trembled as he worked. He held the wires, the small power core, the clamps. He could fix it. He could make it stronger, unbreakable, or he could weaken it just enough for her to escape later. His heart pounded. If the guards caught him, he would lose more than his tongue. He would lose his life. But Kaylin's eyes, even broken, even bleeding, still begged for belief. He bent over the collar, his hand steady now. "Almost done," he muttered. The guards yawned, bored. Duran made a choice. With a twist of wire and a careful shift of power, he set the collar to fail after a few hours. It would look perfect now, but later, it would release her. He clipped the last piece in place and handed it back. Fixed. The guards locked the collar around her neck. It hummed with false strength. One guard smirked. "Good. She'll learn silence in labor." They dragged her away, but before she disappeared, Kaylin looked back. Just for a heartbeat, her eyes met Duran's again. And in that moment, though no words could leave her lips, he understood. She knew what he had done. That night, Duran sat in the dark, listening to the city hum outside. He could have pushed it from his mind. He could have told himself it wasn't his problem. But he didn't. The truth gnawed at him. The council wanted her silenced forever. Yet she still fought to be heard. And now by his own hands he had given her a chance. A small chance, maybe. But sometimes a spark was enough to start a fire. The labor yard smelled of rust and smoke. Prisoners moved like shadows between broken machines, their collars glowing faintly, their chains clinking with each step. The guards barked orders, but most of the prisoners barely listened. They were too tired, too broken. Kaylin was different. Her steps were weak, her body bent from pain, but her eyes, those sharp, burning eyes, still searched the world around her. Her tongue was gone, her mouth stitched in silence, but her mind screamed louder than any voice. The collar around her neck sparked, humming with power. It should have crushed her will. kept her movements slow and empty. But something was wrong with it. The mechanic had touched it. His hands had lingered too long, his eyes had said too much. She felt it. The weakness was there, hidden, waiting. Joran came to the yard 3 days later. His official task was simple: repair the heavy drill engines that dug through stone. The guards let him in, waving him past with little interest. To them he was only a tool not worth suspicion, but to her he was the spark. Kaylin saw him from across the yard. Her heart jolted. She wanted to run, to shout the truth, but her mouth betrayed her. She could only watch. Joran bent over an engine, his hands black with grease, his hair falling into his face. He tried to focus on the machine, but he could feel her eyes on him. Every time he glanced up, she was there, watching, waiting. And then she moved. She stumbled near him, carrying a heavy piece of scrap metal as if it were part of her work. The guards barely noticed. She dropped the scrap close to where he worked and crouched, her hands trembling. On the dirt, with her fingernails, she scratched symbols, letters. Joran blinked. At first he thought she was only drawing nonsense. But then he saw the shapes, simple words, broken lines. They come, his breath caught. He looked at her, then at the guards, then back to the ground. She kept scratching. Fleet, dark, soon. The words were messy, uneven, rushed, but they spoke louder than chains. Joran's hands shook. He whispered under his breath, so low no one else could hear. "You're telling me the truth, aren't you?" Her eyes locked onto his. She nodded, just once. The collar sparked as if angry at her defiance, but she did not stop. She dragged another message into the dirt. "Council knows." Joran's chest tightened. The council knew? Then why punish her? Why silence her, unless the truth was something they wanted buried? A guard's shadow fell across the ground. Joran's heart leapt. He quickly kicked dirt over the words, smearing them into nothing. The guard squinted. "You two. Back to work." Kaylin lowered her head, acting weak again. Joran turned back to the engine, his face blank. But inside, his thoughts raged like fire. That night, Joran lay awake again. He stared at the half-broken fan above his bed. He thought of her words. They come. Fleet. Dark. Soon. He could almost see it in his mind. Ships hidden beyond the stars, shadows waiting to fall. And the council knows. That was the part that chilled him most. If they knew, then they had chosen silence over warning. Why? To protect their power? To stop panic? Or was there something even darker? He slammed his fist on the table. Tools rattled. He couldn't push it away anymore. The next day, he carried a small device with him to the yard. A voice modulator, old and patched together. It was meant for testing broken speakers, but he had rewired it. It could read throat vibrations, turning faint hums into words. He found Kaylin near the broken drills. The guards had grown lazy, bored of watching the same slow suffering every day. Joran crouched close and slid the device into the dirt between them. "Try it," he whispered. Kaylin's eyes widened. Her fingers shook as she picked up the device. She pressed it to her throat and forced a sound, just a low, broken hum. The device crackled, then spoke in a harsh, mechanical voice. "Come-ing." Her eyes filled with tears. For the first time since her punishment, her truth had a voice again. Joran nodded. "Tell me everything." Her broken voice came out piece by piece, harsh and robotic, but clear enough to shatter his world. She spoke of shadows in space, ships built in silence, an enemy older than the council itself. She told him of intercepted signals, of warnings ignored, of silence enforced by fear, and she told him one last thing, something that made his blood run cold. "They are already here." Joran's breath caught. He looked around the yard, half expecting the sky to crack open. But the air was calm. The guards were laughing, the prisoners were dragging chains. No one seemed to hear the doom pressing closer. He grabbed her arm. "If you're right, then we don't have much time. We need proof. Something more than words. Something they can't erase." Kaylin's eyes burned with the fire he had seen in the chamber. She nodded. Her collar sparked weakly, the tampered circuit holding just enough for her to move freely. Joran knew what he had to do. Tomorrow, he would break into the old signal station near the docks. If the enemy was close, the station's receivers might already hear them. He looked at her one last time before leaving. "If what you say is true, then it's not just your tongue they wanted to cut. It's the truth itself." Kaylin closed her eyes. And though she could not smile, Her eyes shone with something close to hope. For the first time, she was no longer alone. The old signal station sat on the edge of the city, forgotten by most. It had once been the pride of the empire, a place where messages from distant colonies and ships arrived in bursts of static and light. But now newer towers had taken its place, and this one was left to rot. Its walls were cracked, its roof half collapsed, and its giant dish pointed at the sky like a broken finger. For Duran, it was perfect. He arrived at night carrying only a small tool bag and a nervous heart. The city above slept, its towers glowing with calm white lights. Guards patrolled the main streets, but no one cared about the dead station at the edge of the docks. Kaylin was already waiting. She had slipped away from the labor yard when the collar had finally failed, just as he had planned. She wore a ragged cloak to hide her chains, and her eyes scanned every shadow. She could not speak without the device, but she didn't need to. Her presence was enough. Duran pushed open the rusted door. The station's inside smelled of dust and old wires. Machines stood silent, their screens dark, their panels covered in grime. But Duran saw the potential. If the receivers still worked, they might capture signals the council wanted hidden. "Stay close," he whispered. Kaylin nodded and followed him inside. He set to work quickly, pulling open a control panel. Sparks flew as he rewired the circuits, rerouting power from the old backup core. The machines groaned, coughed, and then flickered to life. Dim green lights glowed on the consoles, and the great dish outside groaned as it shifted toward the stars. Duran's hands moved fast, but his mind was racing. What if Kaylin was wrong? What if he risked his life only to find nothing but empty static? Then he remembered her eyes in the chamber. He remembered her scratching words into the dirt, her broken voice on the modulator. No, she was not lying. The machine buzzed, and a stream of sound filled the room. Static, crackles, then faint voices. Duran twisted the dials, filtering out the noise. Slowly, words began to form. Position, Sector 7. Fleet advancing. His stomach turned cold. He looked at Kaylin. Her eyes widened. He adjusted again. Another voice came through, deeper, full of authority. "Do not transmit to Council. Repeat, silence all channels. If the people learn, we lose control." Duran froze. The voice was not an enemy's, it was one of the counselors. Kaylin gripped his arm. She didn't need to speak. The look on her face said everything the council knew. They had heard the same signals. They had chosen silence, but then another sound cut through. Not human this time. A voice, metallic, layered with static and rage. "They will fall. We come." The signal made the lights flicker. Duran's blood ran cold. It was not a recording of the council. It was something else. Something out there. Kaylin pressed the modulator to her throat. The device crackled. "Them," she rasped. "Already. Here." The machine screamed with static and then silence. Duran's hands shook as he pulled back. His heart pounded in his chest. This was no longer rumor. No longer whispers in dirt. This was proof. The enemy existed. They were real. And they were close. Footsteps. Duran froze. Someone was outside. The sound of boots on stone. Kaylin darted to the window. Shadows moved in the moonlight. Guards. They must have tracked the power surge. Duran whispered. He yanked the data core from the console, tucking it into his bag. "We need to run." The door slammed open. 2 guards stormed in, rifles raised. "Step away from the console," one shouted. Kaylin's collar sparked faintly. It was dying, but still active enough to shock her if they noticed. She kept her head low, hiding the bandage on her mouth. Duran raised his hand slowly, his bag clutched tight. "I'm just fixing the station," he said, his voice calm. "Nothing illegal," the guard sneered. "At night? Without orders? Show us the bag." Duran's chest tightened. If they saw the data core, it was over. But before the guard could step closer, Kaylin moved. She stumbled forward, pretending to trip. The guard snarled and shoved her back. In that split second, Duran acted. He swung his wrench hard, striking the second guard across the helmet. Sparks flew as the man fell. The first guard raised his rifle, but Kaylin leapt, silent and furious, wrapping her chains around his arm. The gun fired into the wall, smoke filling the room. Together, they wrestled him down. Duran brought the wrench down again, and the guard collapsed. Breathing hard, Duran grabbed Kaylin's hand. "We have to go now." They ran into the night, the old station burning behind them from the stray rifle shot. Alarms echoed across the docks, red lights flashing. Joran's lungs burned, but he clutched the bag tight. Inside it was the data core, their only proof. They ducked into an alley, hiding behind broken crates. Joran leaned against the wall, gasping for air. Kaelin pressed the modulator to her throat. Her voice came out broken but fierce. Now, they believe? Joran shook his head. No, the council will bury this. They'll hunt us both. Her eyes locked onto his. She pressed the modulator again. Then we show everyone. Joran looked down at the bag, then up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the fleet was waiting. And here on the ground, the council was ready to silence them forever. He clenched his fist. The evidence was real. The truth was his to carry, and he would not let it die. The city was alive with alarms. Red lights pulsed across the towers. Sirens screamed through the streets, and search drones buzzed in the night sky like angry insects. The council wasted no time. They wanted the fugitives caught before dawn. Joran and Kaelin ran through narrow alleys, their feet pounding against stone. The stolen data core rattled inside Joran's bag, heavy with the weight of truth. Every step reminded him that he carried more than metal. He carried proof that could shatter the Empire's lies. Behind them, the voices of guards echoed. There, stop them! Rifle shots cracked, sparks flying off walls as bullets missed by inches. Joran grabbed Kaelin's hand and pulled her into a side passage. They stumbled through smoke rising from burning trash bins, ducked under broken pipes, and slipped past workers who scattered at the sight of guards. Kaelin's cloak was torn, her collar sparking weakly. She moved with silence but not weakness. Even without a tongue, she carried the fire of someone who refused to break. They reached the old transport yard. Rusted hover carts and cargo haulers sat in long rows, their shadows stretching under the pale moonlight. Joran dragged Kaelin behind a broken hauler, crouching low. His lungs burned, his arms trembled, but he forced himself to stay calm. We can't outrun them forever, he whispered. Kaelin pressed the modulator to her throat. The device buzzed. Proof. Must survive. Joran looked at the bag. He knew she was right. If they died here, the truth would die with them. Searchlights swept across the yard. Drones hovered overhead, scanning with red beams. Guards spread out in formation, rifles ready. Joran scanned the yard, desperately. Engines, wires, power cells, machines. His world was made of machines, and machines could still save them. He pulled Kaelin toward a hover cart with half-dead batteries. Help me, he whispered. She didn't ask questions. She grabbed loose wires while he pried open the engine cover. His hands moved fast, faster than fear. Sparks bit his fingers, but he didn't stop. The cart roared weakly to life, lights flickering. It wasn't built for speed, but it was better than waiting to die. Get in! They climbed aboard just as guards spotted them. There, don't let them escape. Rifle fire exploded around them. Joran slammed the controls. The cart jerked forward, sputtering smoke, then shot across the yard. Guards shouted and chased, drones swooping low with sirens blaring. The hover cart weaved between stacks of crates. Bullets tore through wood and metal, sparks flying. Kaelin gripped the side tightly, her eyes fierce but calm. Joran's knuckles whitened as he forced the controls to hold steady. A drone swooped ahead, blocking their path. Its red light burned into Joran's eyes. Hold on, he shouted. He spun the cart, slamming it into a stack of fuel canisters. The crates toppled, crushing the drone in a burst of sparks. The cart skidded, nearly flipping, but Joran pulled it back under control. Kaelin pressed the modulator, her broken voice buzzing. You fight like liar. Joran gave a short laugh, breathless. Then let's lie our way out of this alive. The chase carried them out of the yard and into the lower streets. Civilians scattered as the cart tore through market stalls and narrow roads. The council didn't care about collateral damage. Their guards kept firing, their drones kept hunting. Joran spotted an old service tunnel ahead. If they could make it inside, they might shake the patrols. He pushed the cart hard, the engine screaming. Just as they reached the tunnel, a blast hit the back of the vehicle. The cart spun, metal screeching, smoke pouring from the engine. Out! Joran yelled. They leapt from the cart as it crashed into the tunnel wall, exploding in fire. The blast lit up the night, throwing shadows across the stone. Guards shouted behind them, their footsteps drawing closer. Joran grabbed Kaelin's hand again and pulled her deeper into the tunnel. The air was thick with dust and the stench of burning fuel. Inside, the tunnel twisted like a maze. Pipes lined the walls, dripping water. Rusted signs warned of danger. It was perfect for hiding, but also a trap if they were cornered. Kalen tugged his arm. She pointed upward. A maintenance ladder. Go, Joran whispered. They climbed quickly, their hands slipping on the wet metal. Above them was a grate. Joran shoved it open, revealing the city's rooftop maze. They crawled out just as searchlights swept past below. The city stretched before them, towers glowing with pale light. The night air was sharp and cold. From up here, Joran could see the council's spire in the distance, black against the stars. Somewhere inside, the ruler sat in comfort, pretending the world was safe. But the truth in his bag told a different story. Kalen pressed the modulator to her throat, her voice weak but steady. "I must spread it." Joran nodded. "Then we'll need allies. People who still believe in something." Shouts rose from below. The guards had found the crashed cart. It would only be minutes before they tracked the fugitives again. Joran tightened the straps on his bag. He looked at Kalen, then at the spire. His heart pounded with fear, but also with fire. "This isn't just a chase anymore," he said quietly. "This is war." Kalen's eyes blazed. For the first time since her tongue was cut, she felt hope, not because she could speak, but because someone was finally listening. And as the sirens wailed below and drones scoured the sky, they vanished into the shadows of the rooftops, carrying with them the one thing the council feared most: the truth. The rooftops were quiet, but danger never left. Joran and Kalen moved like shadows, keeping low between vents and broken antennas. Below, the city roared with alarms. The council's soldiers scoured every street, their drones shining red eyes into the night. Joran's chest ached with each breath. He was exhausted, but the bag at his side reminded him why they could not stop. Inside it was the data core, the evidence of ships in the dark, proof of voices that spoke of invasion. Kalen followed close, her cloak torn, her collar sparking weakly. She touched his arm and pointed ahead. At the edge of the district rose a tower, smaller than the council's spire, but still guarded. Its windows glowed faint blue. "The archive," Joran whispered. He had heard of it, a place where the Empire stored old records, military logs, maps, history. If there was truth buried anywhere, it would be there. Kalen pressed the modulator to her throat. It crackled as she forced sound. Answers? Inside. They reached the tower near dawn. The sky was pale with early light. Shadows stretched long across the streets. Few guards patrolled this side, but the gates were locked. Joran's eyes scanned the wall. Machines whispered to him. He saw the control box by the door, wires humming faintly. His hands itched. "Give me a moment," he muttered. He pulled the box open and crossed wires. Sparks bit his fingers, but the lock clicked, and the heavy door creaked open. Inside, the archive smelled of dust and cold stone. Rows of glowing pillars lined the hall, each filled with holographic records. Data shimmered in the air like ghosts. Maps of old wars, logs of starships long destroyed, decrees from council leaders. Kalen's eyes widened. She moved fast, her hands brushing over the consoles. With gestures, she called forth records of transmissions, long hidden. Joran joined her, connecting the stolen data core. The archive lit up, merging the stolen proof with stored secrets. And then the truth unfolded. First came the images. Scans of ships, dark and jagged, their shapes alien. They were not traitors, not rebels. They were built for war. Thousands of them hidden in deep space waiting. Then came the signals, metallic voices full of hate, full of hunger. The stars belong to us. The humans will break first. Their council. Weak, blind. Joran's skin prickled. His worst fears were real. The enemy wasn't coming. They were already near. But then something worse appeared. Files from the council. Private orders. Instructions to silence all warnings. Keep the people calm, one message read. Panic will weaken our grip. Another. Those who speak must be punished. Let their voices die before their words spread. And finally, one more. A message stamped with the head counselor's seal. They may come, but we will use them. When the enemy strikes, we will rise as saviors. Fear will give us total control. Joran's hands tightened into fists. His stomach turned. It wasn't just silence. It was betrayal. The council had known. They had planned to sacrifice their own people to rule through fear. Kalen staggered back, her chest rising and falling with rage. She pressed the modulator, her voice trembling. They planned, Everything. Joranne's throat was dry. They cut your tongue, not because they thought you lied, but because you told the truth too soon. Her eyes burned with fury, but also with grief. She had tried to save them. Instead, she had been broken by the very leaders sworn to protect. The archive's lights flickered. Joranne turned sharply. The doors were closing, heavy steel sealing them in. "Someone knows we're here," he whispered. Footsteps echoed. Guards poured into the hall, rifles raised. Behind them walked the elder council member, the one Joranne had seen lower his gaze in the chamber. His face was pale, his eyes heavy with shame. He raised a trembling hand. "Stop! Do not fire!" The guards froze. The elder looked at Joranne and Kaelin. "You should not have come here," Joranne snarled. "Then you knew. You've always known." The old man's shoulders sagged. "Yes, we knew. But we are powerless. The council will never allow this truth to spread." "Then why stop the guards?" Joranne demanded. The elder's eyes flicked to Kaelin. "Because she was right. From the beginning. And I could not watch her be silenced again." The guards shifted uneasily. Some lowered their rifles. Doubt spread among them like cracks in stone. Joranne saw it. He seized the moment. He pointed at the glowing records hovering in the archive. "Look, the enemy is real. The council is lying to you. They plan to use the invasion to take power forever." The soldiers glanced at one another. They weren't leaders. They were men and women ordered to obey. But now, faced with proof, their eyes betrayed fear. Kaelin stepped forward, her collar sparking weakly. She pressed the modulator, forcing her broken voice to echo. "Truth cannot, because..." The words hung heavy in the hall. Even with her voice shattered, even with her tongue gone, she still spoke. The elder lowered his head. "If you want to live, you must leave now. Take the core. Take the records. Show the people before the council destroys it all." Joranne met Kaelin's eyes. The revelation burned between them like fire. The council was worse than liars. They were traitors to their own. And now, the burden of truth rested in their hands. They fled through a side passage, the elder buying them time with his authority. Behind them, the archive glowed with stolen secrets. As dawn broke across the city, Joranne and Kaelin disappeared into the maze of streets. Above them, the council's spire stood tall, black against the rising sun. But for the first time, the spire looked fragile. Because now they carried not just whispers, they carried the revelation, and soon, the Empire would have to face it. The city never slept, but that morning it felt restless. Whispers spread through the lower streets, rumors of alarms, of soldiers chasing shadows, of explosions in the night. The people sensed something was wrong, though the council's towers shone bright, pretending all was calm. In a small workshop hidden under layers of metal and smoke, Joranne and Kaelin prepared for their next move. The stolen data core sat on the table, glowing faintly. Next to it, Joranne had rigged an old transmitter, weak, patched together with scraps, but strong enough to carry a signal across the city. If they used it, every worker, every citizen with a receiver could hear the truth, but the cost would be high. The moment they transmitted, the council would know their location. Joranne wiped sweat from his brow, his hands trembling over the wires. "Once we do this," he said, his voice low, "there's no going back." Kaelin leaned close, her bandaged mouth hidden in the shadows. She pressed the modulator to her throat. The harsh robotic sound filled the room. Truth. Must spread. Her eyes burned with fire. She had already paid with her tongue. She would not let fear steal the rest. The door rattled suddenly. Joranne spun, wrench in hand. But it wasn't soldiers. It was the elder council member, the same man who had spared them in the archive. His cloak was torn, his face pale with exhaustion. "They are coming," he whispered. "The High Guard knows where you hide. You have minutes, maybe less." Joranne grabbed the data core. "Then help us. Stand with us. Tell the truth yourself." The elder's shoulders sagged. "If I speak, I die. My family dies. The council will erase us." Kaelin stepped forward, her chains clinking softly. She lifted the modulator. "We all die if..." Silent. The old man met her gaze. For a long moment he said nothing. Then with trembling hands he pressed a seal into Joranne's palm. The seal of his rank. "If you survive, show them this. Some will believe you." And then he was gone, slipping back into the shadows as the sound of boots echoed outside. Joranne's heart raced. He turned to Kaelin. "We have two choices. Run and try to fight another day, or send the signal now and let the truth burn across the city." Kaelin didn't hesitate. She pressed the modulator. Signal. Joran swallowed hard. He had expected her to choose that. Still, his chest tightened with fear. He bent over the transmitter, sliding the data core into place. The machine hummed, lights glowing red. Outside, heavy boots marched closer. The transmitter roared to life. Static filled the workshop. Then the sound of the alien fleet's voices echoed, metallic and sharp. We devour. Then came the Council's private orders, their betrayal laid bare for all to hear. Keep the people calm. Fear will give us control. They may come, but their fire will crown us rulers. The messages blasted through the city, pouring into every receiver, every hidden radio, every worker's ear. The Empire's lies crumbled in seconds. Chaos erupted outside. Citizens poured into the streets, shouting, demanding answers. Guards shouted back, torn between silencing them and doubting their own orders. The city shook with unrest, but the workshop doors burst open. Soldiers stormed in, rifles raised. Down on the ground, one shouted. Joran grabbed Kaelin's hand, pulling her behind the table. Bullets tore through metal, sparks flying. He swung his wrench, knocking a rifle aside, then slammed his shoulder into another guard. The room filled with smoke and fire. Kaelin fought too, her chains whipping like weapons. Silent, fierce, unstoppable. Even without a tongue, she spoke through action. But they were outnumbered. Joran felt the butt of a rifle slam into his ribs. He gasped, falling to one knee. The data core slipped from his hands. A soldier kicked it away. No! Joran shouted, scrambling forward. Kaelin dove, grabbing the core, clutching it tight against her chest. Her collar sparked, failing at last. Pain shot through her, but she did not let go. Then the ground trembled. The shooting stopped for a heartbeat as everyone froze. Dust fell from the ceiling. The workshop wall shook. A low rumble echoed across the city. Not thunder. Not machines. Something deeper. Something alive. Joran's eyes widened. He stumbled to the doorway. Beyond the rooftops, the sky glowed with unnatural light. Shadows moved against the clouds, shapes vast and terrible. Ships. Dark, jagged ships descending. Kaelin staggered to his side, her eyes wide. She pressed the modulator with shaking hands. They are here. The soldiers looked to the sky, their faces pale with fear. For the first time, their rifles lowered. Joran's chest heaved. The choice was no longer between silence and truth. The truth was here in fire and steel above their heads. He turned to Kaelin, gripping her hand. Then we fight together, she nodded, her eyes blazing. The Council's lies had fallen. The invasion had begun. And in the heart of the chaos, a mechanic and a broken prisoner carried the only hope left. The courage to stand when all else had fallen.